Anecdotes for success. Level up with truth, meaning, trade-offs, perspective.
All right, so we are officially in season 3 now. I thought tonight we'd talk about, well, my favorite subject because I've been involved in it, but your favorite subject because you're passionate about it and you're an educator as well. We can get into that later, but I thought we'd talk about some education concepts in general and about the show we just helped my class put on and the special things we're trying to do since he's been a multi-time guest on the show. So education. Matt, I've had some good talks with people the last couple of days. I've had 2 people call me, I'm a disruptor in the educational system. That's why people don't always jump on board with what I'm doing.
What a compliment.
I thought that because I was venting about some things. I go, I just don't know why people see it my way. Like there's no downside. And he goes, well, because you're a disruptor. And
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna get a shirt that says that.
That you should, and I can see where he's coming from. I think I know where you're coming from, and I don't even know who said it, but I think I know where he's coming from. I guess you say there's no downside but isn't that the downside to the person who just loves their comfort zone, right?
Yeah, it's really what it's all about. In New York State, I would publicly say teachers can make a nice living with the pension, with the time off. I'm not saying working conditions are the same. I'm not saying all administrators are the same. We literally have time to pursue other side hustles. Now, some people will tell me teachers shouldn't have to pursue other side hustles. It's their career. And well, that's fine. Just budget and have a great life and coach and do what you want. But if you want to fulfill your true life and have happiness and live for the adventure like we talk about, to me there's no more, but besides being an entrepreneur and having the freedom to do what you want to do when you want to do it, teaching,
but that has its trade-offs too, right? That has its downside.
We talk about that, but teaching is the next best lifestyle if you like it, because you have time to pursue lots of things. But people don't do that, and I've learned the last couple of years there's people that aren't too happy with what I'm pursuing because I don't know if it makes you feel bad or if you're not happy with yourself or if you're jealous. I mean, I don't like using jealous because I don't know how other people think, but there's got to be something. Just be happy for me.
Yeah, I think you touched on a lot of things there, and I think it's bigger than just teaching, of course, but I think it's a good spotlight on it. I think what you're doing shines a light in a lot of ways on people that they could be more, they could do more, and the excuse is on when someone else is doing it in front of you and doing it in front of others, more importantly, because then I think envy drives so much, and it's why it's like why there's people out there go, we should tax X group more, and it's like, okay, well, what do you want to do with the money? It's almost like, well, I don't care. That's not the reason I want to tax those groups of people. It's not because I want the money to be used for something beneficial. It's because I want to punish those people. And you in a different way. It's like, don't do something. It's like other professions. Don't do something that makes me look like I'm not doing enough, because now I've got to look in the mirror a little bit, right? Maybe I could be doing more with my life, but nobody knows it unless somebody else does more, and then everyone can see the disruption, if you will. And I think I really believe that. I think that's what the problem is. They're not. It's envy, and that's really what it comes down to in a lot of ways, and that's sad to me, because hey, look, do whatever you want to do. Like you said, hey, I'm glad we live in a state, and I don't know what the other states are like, but I'm glad we live in a state where you can teach and make a solid living, and you can have a retirement, your pension, and you can have this time off that you can pursue other things, whatever those happen to be for you. Maybe it's building a side business, maybe it's volunteering, maybe it's participating in your community in some other ways. Who cares? But doing your own thing. how you want to. Just accept that other people might want to do other things, and they get the benefits of spending that time. If you want to watch Netflix all week or all summer, watch Netflix all week. Just don't expect the person who painted houses all summer or earned an extra 30 grand to not invest in other things, not have a better life for it. Look, they made their sacrifice. They get the benefit of that sacrifice, and they should. And we want a world that lives that way. But I think if you want to have that upside for teaching, then again, it comes back to envy, and it also comes back. I keep trying to get back to this other point, but I'm not finding my way there easily, as you can tell. I think the other thing is, besides the envy piece of it, it's comfort. People get in these comfort zones, Paul. And I say when I just talked to another group of students recently, not yours, but a different one, and it came up, and they said, well, why aren't these? I was mentioning how other people I know who I think are way harder than me and can do way more than me, but aren't. And they say, why? And the answer is it's comfort. They're comfortable in their little area. They don't want to move out because they don't want to fail. They don't want number one. It's the path of least resistance. Therefore, they end up in this comfort trap, and that's part of the problem here as well.
Yeah, and that's what I want to get into. I mean, I agree with that. And we recently just had Cam F. Awesome in our area, a guy that charges thousands of dollars to speak at schools all over the country. I mean, he was showing me his schedule, and I'm just amazed at how well he's doing. I offer it up to school districts for free, and I mean, we had a great turnout. It was a super success. We can talk about the project in a minute. Obviously, you help the kids so much with raising money for the projects and thinking outside the box and what we can do. And I don't get commitment from all the schools. Like, you have administrators that don't even respond back, or they try to put it on the kids to do all the work, which I understand, having the kids be part of the process. That's my program, but they can't physically arrange for students to leave a school and go to another building. It's got to come from leadership. And you know what the common theme was, Matt, with these leaders? Well, what if kids don't want to go? Well, what if they do? And by the way, you're in charge, so you tell them to go. Isn't that what a leader is? Being proactive, telling people, listen, you don't know this is in your best interest. You have to trust me on this. Here's some background. You're going. And if you don't, there's said consequences if you skip school. But nobody does that. Isn't that crazy?
Well, it is. Well, and I've been giving it some thought since it happened, and a couple of things have gone through my mind. But one of which is, what's the incentive for them to go or not to go? Let me rephrase it. What's the incentive for the leaders to have the students go or not go?
Well, state curriculum says you have to prove that you're teaching diversity, equity, inclusion.
Okay.
Motivational speaker. I mean, you could use the word celebrity, but that's perspective of probably what you're interested in. But he's a nationally known figure, right? A 5-time national champion in boxing, and he spreads an incredible message. And we even went to the schools with him to spread the message. So to me, the incentives to broaden your students' education and provide opportunity that they didn't know existed. The easy way is to just stay in the classroom and keep reading out of books and doing your projects. It just doesn't even resonate with me. I was telling you earlier, I was called an educational disruptor this week because I don't make things easier on other people with my visions, but yes, that's a compliment, And
it is.
Objective wise, we've raised all that money. We flew in a videographer. It was like being on a reality show for 2 days. And I knew I was saying, how when I'm digressing a little, how when you watch a law show and you hear the music playing when someone's about to talk, so it's going to be something important. Or someone on Criminal Minds is walking down a trail and the music comes on, so something's going to happen. I didn't realize how often I say something very smart but the camera turned and looked at me, and I'm like, man, I'm saying something good right now because the camera's on me. So, or it's going to be a bloopers reel. But
I was
but
going to say, we'll see about that.
objective met, tons of students. The morning session was over 80% full, and it's gonna be a real documentary about CAMF awesome that we're gonna push towards Netflix. And I've had several people look at me like, Netflix? I'm like, well, why not? That's part of the message. Like, if I shoot to be on Netflix and then it's only on YouTube with 1 million views, okay. That was one of Cam's things. If you achieve your goals the first time you try, that's not a goal, that's a to-do list.
Yeah, great. I
And
love
so
it. That's great. That's
I,
a
I
good
know
one.
we're kind of all over the place, but that's the type of stuff we do. And I guess I am a disruptor because when I do things and other educators or administrators don't see the upside in it or don't want to take the challenge and try it, I can't even think like that anymore. So I'm happy I'm
Can't
doing what I
comprehend.
do, but it's very frustrating. Like, people are like, well, what if you don't raise enough money? Well, we did. What if it's not on YouTube? We're trying. What if not enough people come? They did. It was a hit. And that's what a business owner deals with every day, right?
100%. It's funny you say. I remember the whole "what if we don't raise enough money" thing, because there were commitments, financial commitments that had to be made before the money was raised, right?
Yeah.
And a doer goes, okay, now we know the goal. Let's go get after it. Not, well, what if we don't? And that's so much the difference in life between. I don't like to say winners and losers because I don't feel like that's the right terminology by any means. But people get the things done they want to get done, and people who sit around and wish or give the old, well, what if, what you can, what if, not you can what if things to death. Most people what if things to death, and they never take action because of it. And this was a great example of, okay, here's what we're going to need to do. Let's go out and do it. And not only was it done, but it was in terms of the financial needs, but they were far exceeded, right? And not only not only was there one session, there was two sessions, and there was news coverage and interviews and all the relationships built on on the way. And to the average person hearing, well, we're trying to get this on Netflix. If you can't comprehend that in the goals and in the way those things are done, and that's just so far out of your realm of possibility, and whether it's Netflix or building a business or raising enough money for your church or whatever it happens to be, if you envision those things and see those things, you're thinking the wrong way. You're not thinking the right way. You're not going to get where you want to go. And maybe it's because you're in a comfort zone, or maybe because maybe because you're scared, or probably both. But for you to say that, hey, this is what we want to do, and the average person can't even comprehend it, that terrifies me. Like, what are you doing to push yourself in your life?
I don't get it. I mean, to this day, I'm so grateful I worked in the real world because it gave me a perspective getting into teaching. And listen, I'm saying it from that perspective. There's plenty of teachers that get it, that have always taught, right?
Yeah, Paul, I don't think it's a teacher individually. I mean, let's get into this a little bit, and I was giving this some thought earlier today as well, knowing we were going to talk about this a little. Like, I don't think it's a teacher. I don't know any teachers personally, and I doubt there's many of them. There's probably some, because there's bad everything, but who go into it without this idea that they want to be impactful, right, and help and change. I think most teachers have this wonderful ideals and what they're trying to accomplish. I think it's a system that says, why bother, right? What's the point? What's the point of all right, I can take my kids and give them this experience and introduce them to this person and maybe have a really great impact. But in order to do that, I got a line of buses or talk about how we're going to get there and get back and upset my normal day. Well, if I don't do it, who cares? There's no, I don't see the incentives to do it. And the system's set up that way. I'm sure for its reasons. But man, there's a lot of negative behind that.
I thought a lot lately. They become institutionalized. And I think you can use that term with any career you're in. If you're doing the same thing for too long, you're doing the same thing for too long. That's the problem. I mean, I
By
I think,
definition.
listen, I think that was brilliant, wasn't it? I think that's why pro athletes change teams, and like they want something different, and whether they talk to other people and form a dream team per se, or they just go to another city and get a new look, or maybe they're setting up a charity behind the scenes in their new city. I don't know. But you can't just do the same thing, and to think you're going to go do the same thing for 30 years
Mm.
is
It just gave me goosebumps in a negative way to think that I want to throw up with the mere thought of it.
it's the system. And hopefully, I mean, as I get older, I'm to that point now, whether it's 2 or 4 years or I stay longer in education, I'm more emboldened with what I say because I really don't care. Nothing will happen to me. And I'm set up where I could go pursue other things. But education
Well,
is so passionate.
Paul,
I want to
real
spread
quick.
this to other schools. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, real quick. All you're trying to do is pursue the truth in this, right? Pillar number one. It's not. This is your opinion on this and your experiences. It's based on your experiences within the system and those kinds of things. I mean, hey, sure, I'm sure some of what you're saying, some people aren't going to like to hear. Some people are going to agree with wholeheartedly, and then there'll be a whole lot in between. I'm sure, like anything. But all you're saying is what you see as the truth, and you'd be a hypocrite. We'd both be, but you'd be a hypocrite be talking about this and saying, well, I really don't want to talk about it because I don't want to upset anyone, or I don't anything like that. Like we've all got a responsibility to tell the truth as we see it, be willing to change our opinions and back up and go a different direction as information comes out or our perspective changes or whatever. But you're not coming at this from some sort of outside perspective. I mean, and I think that's important to note, that all what you're doing is speaking what you believe to be the truth, and that's important to note. That's all.
I appreciate that. I want to ask you a question, and I hope you get where I'm going with this, or if you don't, you don't. I'll curl you back in. But if obviously all my students apply to the program, and they're all good students according to the system, like they have
Yep.
good grades. And we could get into passion versus IQ in another episode, but they all pass the litmus test of being good students in the public school system. But do you think when you get a bunch of like-minded people together, does iron sharpen iron for every single kid there or student? Or is it human nature to still have leaders develop out of that, doers come out of that do what the leaders say, and then just have followers that do nothing and they stay in their comfort zone, even though they might not be in their comfort zone with other people, but with a bunch of like-minded people? Do you still get those three groups? Like in a normal classroom, you're going to have the rock star students, you're going to have the doers that do what they're told because you're supposed to, and then you have the kids that just follow along and don't really have a vested interest. Do you think if you get a bunch of like-minded students that are all motivated, do you still develop those three categories? Would it be that way at work? Would it be that way in a corporation? What are your thoughts on that? But before I chime in on what happened.
Yeah, no, I would think so. I mean, there's and I certainly want to hear what you see, because you're the one in the classroom and dealing with this stuff. I would certainly expect, and from what I've seen, I think that's what you get is certain people who rise above if you will, and but that said, I can't help but wonder if that is is that based on their interest level in the topic, or is that just based on if we're talking about you get one group that kind of boom rises up, if you will, and you're talking about B, another group, and if you're talking about C, a different group. My guess is you probably don't. You probably get the same kids who tend to rise up that way. And it'd be interesting to see too, is it because they're more intelligent, or is it because just they're motivated to be the best? They look at themselves that way. But I also believe this. It just popped into my head. There's something called the Pareto principle, and I think I want to make sure I get this right. Go ahead, feel free to fact check me, anyone. But basically, what it seems to come down to is that 20% of the group, 20% of the people produce, and the other 80% produce a lot less. And whether we're talking about scientists, musicians, athletes, there's 20% of the people are going to score most of the points in the NBA. And there's 20% of the people are going to hit most of the home runs in Major League Baseball. And there's 20% of the people who are going to produce most of the songs in the top 40 in country music. And I also have heard it presented differently, that there's 10% of the group is going to produce 50% of the outcome. So let's say you have 1,000 employees, 10% of 1,000 is 100, right? So that 100, those 100 people are going to produce 50% of the work or production within that organization. And if that's true, and there seems to be a lot of data on it, and it's an interesting thing to discuss. If that's true, no matter what group you pick, whether it's income, art, your school, your classroom, I guess you could make the argument that 10% of those students are going to do 50% of the work, or 20% of them are going to produce, the majority of they're going to be the ones who stand out, I guess you will. That's where my mind went with that.
No, it's great because it's the same. I didn't know that's what it was called. I always teach the 80-20 principle. And like 80% of lottery tickets are bought by like the 20% poorest Americans.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, not exact statistics, but that's the theory behind it, right?
Right.
And 20% or 80% of a team's runs in baseball are probably scored, batted in by the top 20% of the players.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's the same with anything. So I get that. Like, it provides valuable analysis, and I'm using that in class because that's kind of what happened. I bet you if I divided my class up in thirds, a third were just rock stars. A third did exactly what they were told, maybe by the rock stars, maybe by me. And then a third didn't really do anything. They didn't get in the way. They didn't obstruct. They did something if they were tasked, but they didn't go out of their way. And the trouble with principles like this is it doesn't really give you a solution. It just gives you the analysis, right? It's just going to happen. So the lesson I'm going to use in class tomorrow, and this is what's great about teaching this class. I don't have to give a test on this and have people memorize answers. If you just go all into every opportunity, knowing the more you put into something, the more you'll get out of it. And you might be rewarded a year down the road. You might be rewarded by knowing somebody. Now you meet somebody now that a year or two from now comes back into your life. I think you can shatter this 80-20 thing. If you go into the mindset with intentionally putting in the work, whatever you're doing, whether Cam has a quote, you do the things you don't want to do, so you get to do the things you want to do later. And
Bingo.
But most people, so I look at this, I'm going to use the same, now I know the name of the exact principle, I'm going to use this tomorrow in class, but then ask, how can we shatter this? And do you want to live a life where you're just part of a ratio, a statistic, or an analysis of something? Or do you want to be intentful in everything you do and probably get an outcome you can't even measure right now in the future? Am I explaining that right? That's our mindset.
I think so.
So it's what we talk about with meaning, and you don't have to have meaning in everything you do. You just have to know that meaning can come from everything you do. It's going to come back to you some point in time.
I firmly believe that it's going to come back to you, and the effort you put in, and the commitment you make, and it doesn't have to be your favorite thing in the world, right? It doesn't have to be everything's not going to be your favorite thing to do. It's just that life doesn't work like that. It comes back to so much of it. Things that just keep popping up are, personal responsibility and accountability, right? And hey, look, I look back and I had a conversation with someone recently, and you hear the well, I think it's great you do this. I think it's great you do that. And that's easy to get lost in. But what's important, what the real story is, remember when I was 15, when I was cleaning toilets for $5 an hour? And by the way, I was probably overpaid because I sucked at everything I did at 15. You know what I mean? I didn't know anything yet. I was just a foolish kid who was trying to figure it out, and just like we all were at some degree. It's like, that $5 an hour job at 15 cleaning toilets, that became something. That's not an accident. You know what I mean? And I fully appreciate what that kind of means. And what I want other people to appreciate is that stuff does matter. And sometimes cleaning toilets is the best way to success. It figurative. I'm
Right.
I don't mean that necessarily, but like that's where it comes from. It's like you've got to go out and do, and be willing to get your hands dirty, literally in that sense, and put in the work. And like the value isn't who's paying me how much now. There's a time for that, but it's not always. And even I'll tell you right now, even for me, like, I get asked to do things and invited to do things, or whatever the case may be, and no one's given me a nickel for it. And there are people who would make the argument, what are you wasting your time for? What are you participating in that for? You're not being quote unquote paid for it. And I couldn't disagree more. Value isn't in dollars and cents all the time. In fact, it's often not cents. The dollars and cents come later. It's the investment you're putting in on the front side, whether it's building the relationships and networking, or just the lessons you learn. That's the value. So if you're one of those people who the answer to every question is, well, how much are you going to pay me? Or I'm not doing it unless they pay me what I'm quote unquote worth. Sometimes you're not worth a thing. I know I'm not. What I'm a grateful guest to have an opportunity to learn. And then I get my payoff down the line. Then I get to contribute down the line. So if you're in the mindset of, well, pay me or I'm not doing it, you don't have a clue what you're missing out on. And you don't have a clue how you've bankrupted your future in so many ways. And those people, and I know plenty of them with the mindset of, I'm not doing it unless someone pays me, I know where they end up. And I see it all the time. And I don't want to be around. Those aren't the people I want to hire. Those aren't the people I want to participate with. Those are the people I want nothing to do with. It's not because they want to get paid or because they think they have value, because I'm sure they do. They're missing it.
So you said putting in the work, you said relationships. So before I just thought of this awesome quote that you're going to say, yeah, this is good, or Paul, you're crazy, but I'll get to that in a minute. We'll end with that. I'm about to have two opportunities next. Well, I get clients because of things I've done as a teacher for 26 years, right? And I didn't get paid for any of those things, but it's rewarding me now. I have an opportunity next week, hopefully, if it comes through, and then I'll tell you off camera, not that it's going to change the United States of America, but it's for stuff I put in years ago, and now it's coming back to me now. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's because it's relationships. So for those people that don't do anything or don't take action, here's my quote. You ready? Inaction still burns the bridge.
Okay. Yeah.
So by not doing anything, you're known as the person that doesn't do anything. That's as bad as taking advantage of somebody. Like, you don't do anything. You burnt the bridge because you don't do anything.
I really like that.
Well, if you Google it, it'll probably have my name on it by tomorrow, because
I would hope so. Let's trademark it and get some T-shirts made up. I think it's a really, really good quote. Yes, that your inaction is still a bridge burner. You don't have to go scream and yell and insult people to burn bridges, right? Just being known as someone who doesn't take action is enough to leave you off the team or leave you out, right? And the worst
you're
part
low
is,
energy.
it's even it's even worse, Paul, than being the person who screams and yells or insults or those bridge burners. At least when I do that, and I don't, but at least if I do that, I know I burnt the bridge, and at least I could say, hey, yep, it's not happening because that's how I acted. The people who the inaction bridge burners that you just pointed out, they don't even know they're burning the bridge, and that's probably worse.
Well, it's the awareness thing. You're right.
Yeah.
It's 100% awareness. This is great. So we'll have a guest on next week. I also have a mindset identifier chart that I address sometimes. I'm gonna flash that up on the screen and send it to you ahead of time. And next time it's just us two. We're gonna talk about this whole. It's a matrix I created, not like a Keanu Reeves matrix, but it's a matrix that's it's based on this. You either solve problems or cause problems. That's the one axis. And the other axis is you either take action or don't take action. So
Okay.
if you cause problems, right, but take action, you're toxic.
Okay.
If you cause problems but don't take action, you're a whiner.
Okay.
If you solve problems but don't take action, you're a dreamer.
Okay.
And only a true champion takes action by solving problems. And so I think it'd be right up your alley. You used mindset. You were talking about relationships, all the buzzwords that we like each other for. But yeah, hey. So from one EDU disruptor to another, to one non-bridge burner to another, it's good to be back at it. And hey, viewers, we have subscriber content now, so we're going to kick it over there for 5 or 10 minutes, and it's a lot of valuable stuff we're building. So thanks, and Matt, until next time, we'll talk to you.
Hey, Paul, should we mention what the subscriber content is in the sense that, hey, this is why it's valuable?
Yeah, it's $2.99 a month. We've got plans to build this out some more, and it gives like access to us. It gives access to like phone calls and emails, and help build with businesses, or help build financial advice, or just help get through the 4 pillars: truth, meaning, trade-off, perspective. And when we have guests on, we're going to have bonus content like the giveaways, worksheets, things that they have to offer. So, we love what we do, but there's true value on the other side of this too. And we want to use it to further build the podcast.
Yeah, I think that's important. Thanks for saying that. And I think another thing we can probably provide as well is potential access to getting in contact with some of the guests. I mean, we may have people say, "Hey, look, I don't care what you guys had to say, but man, I really liked what she said or what he said, and I'd like to know more about that." And being able to get attached to them through us is going to be much easier than just sending some direct message through whatever
Absolutely.
social media site.
Absolutely. Perfect. Thanks for bringing that up. I almost talked about it and we didn't talk about it. So,
yeah.
All right, man. Until next week.